Hello and welcome to BW London podcast. So I've been in conversation on, I think it's called the Rap Crew, because they've put up on their community page on YouTube, who is to blame for single parents? Is it, I don't know what the three options are, but the one that I remember is the women, government, maybe it's men, I'm not sure. And because I commented and I've had lots of feedback going back and forth, that question is really sitting with me right now. And I've been asking myself the biggest question I've been asking myself is, why did black women choose social housing and benefits and America food stamps? And because we're very much the same, as I always say, why did black women choose that over their men in the vast majority? I've been trying to answer that question. But ultimately, who is to blame? Despite women, and I've got 100% accountability for single mothers and what's been going on, do or bad by yourself, all of it. But I'm going to go with the government. I'm actually going to go with the government because we've been bamboozled into reducing things. And what I mean by that, everyone's like, oh no, don't be a victim. Oh no, don't use the black card. We've gone so far down that line that we're no longer recognizing real things that are made to bring us down and against us. Like, we're too afraid to say it because we're victims. And even that narrative has been pushed by the agenda to ensure that we can't claim anything is being done against us when it is. It is. It is the government, and for the government, it wasn't just about black people, it was about people in general. I'm sure it's common knowledge that by having a female workforce as well, they could reduce what they paid people, and they actually turned the whole world, the whole Western world, the democratic world, they've turned it into a place where to actually be housed properly and to live a really quality life, only two people coming together can do it. Back in the day, a man could run his whole household. If he was a doctor or a teacher, he could live where he wanted and live his best. Now you can't do that. A teacher in London cannot house themselves and look after a family. It's impossible. The wage never reaches that. So they've made it that families have to join together. So already the government has stepped in and made changes to the family unit. Now, don't get me wrong, there's also, you've got to think about the feminist movement and how women came up and blah, blah, blah. But all of that would have been encouraged by the government for their agenda. The sexual liberation movement of women was for their agenda. Women are the biggest product buyers. We are 80% of the product buyers. We actually are. So breaking us up and taking us away from our men, it hasn't benefited. Who has it benefited? It's benefited the small percentage of the people that dominate and control this world. So while we're now out here having this argument, and Kevin Samuels has his circus of all this back and forth and women and accountability and men, no, we need to go to the root, the core. The government had an agenda that has worked. Breaking up the families was on purpose. It was on purpose for the workforce. It was on purpose for consumer buying and the sexual liberation of the sexual liberation movement. So why has so with the question, who is to blame? Yes, the government is to blame. This doesn't take away from the fact that women's standards have dropped, that the sexual liberation has meant that women praise being a mother way more than being a wife. It doesn't change none of that. I know that these things are true. I know that women are out of control. I know all of these things are true. Women had to rely on men back then also. And the agenda of promoting abuse that happened in families, of course abuse happened in families, but the degree to which it happened has been promoted excessively and very excessively on the black community, hence the colour purple. I was in a meeting yesterday with two black men, one black woman, and we were just speaking about changes since lockdown. And I spoke about some of the changes, some of the things I've identified, especially in the black community. And honestly, these black men argued. They argued, and it wasn't a contentious conversation, but they went for it. They were like, that's because black women were so abused. Because I basically said that majority of the people in my family were taught not to respect men. It was very easy for women in my family to say they were pregnant, but if they say they were going to be wives, all hell broke loose. Oh my God, you're going to be abused, be careful. All of that used to happen. The men, when I told them that in this meeting yesterday, the men turned and said, oh, but a lot of women were taking advantage of, blah. So that narrative pushed by the government has gone down excellently. Listen, everybody knows that slavery never ended. It turned into psychological slavery. And more importantly, in this new world that we're entering, everybody's a slave. The race ain't even a thing. They're like, okay, the race thing is dead. We've worked through that. Physical slavery's over. We've kept the psychology of black people messed up. And now we're moving into global slavery. Hence why all females are kind of messed up right now. And people take words so literally. Like, obviously not every female, but no, not obviously not every female, but definitely the female in the masses in the Western democratic societies are in the masses are in a very depressive place because we're not living our truths of feminine women, and black women even worse. I'm going to leave it there, but ultimately that's my answer. Who is to blame? It's the government. It's an agenda. This is all intentional. Let's stop arguing with one another. Recognize the agenda. Do you know what? I'm going to go on a little bit more because another thing, I'm sick of trends. Even this whole Kevin Samuel movement, it can turn into small trends that misses the agenda. The misses the agenda of what's happening and what we should actually be focusing on. All black people need to be focusing on is getting black men back in the house and bringing our communities back together. We don't even need to be focusing on generational wealth and all of these stuff because there's only corruption at the top anyway. So we throw a black man up there, yay, but ultimately our focus should be families and bringing them back together. But I've got a feeling within this movement, I've not got a feeling, the focus has become women and hating women. It's nonsense. After we deal with the whole accountability and many things that women have done, don't forget that men became extremely irresponsible as a result of this very government movement. Men no longer had to commit to women. They no longer had to marry women. The introduction of contraception and all these things, it really changed the dynamics between men and women. Even dating is a new revolution in the last 50 years. All this 2 and 3 year dating, that is not how people pick partners. Even in the black community, we had what the other communities had. Big Ma at the road would say that what's her name should marry this one and blah blah blah. They used to set things up just like that too, but we don't do that anymore. And we're focusing so much on the women, we're not recognizing how many men were affected by this movement too. Now, if the stats are correct, and I do believe in facts and stats, we are always talking about a small pool of men, 16 to 20% at best. But these are the men that had all the children. I guess that goes back to women because women chose them. But that also goes back to the government, who changed our image. It's not a coincidence that so many young girls are into bad boys and so many young girls would choose fraud or drug dealer over a man with a 9-to-5. That's not a coincidence. That is a government agenda that made women think this way. I'm sorry, people are not so collective, are not so collectively smart that they make their own trends. They don't. They are pushed on us. Right now, the image of the black woman is destroyed. That long nails, that ugly look, that overweightness. I mean, it's not that it's not true, but it was pushed. I joined all of those Atlanta programs and Basketball Wives a whole decade later, and it felt like a joke. It felt like a comedy, what I was looking at. But I watched it all in one go. So I watched how I didn't see the development, how we got here. Our image, black men and women of black people, the image is being destroyed. And as a result, black men are more inclined to fancy women and like women outside of their race because their race's image is destroyed. And the women that have a very masculine, that we can go into all of that. But the women are the same. They are only attracted to the bad boy, the irresponsible, the so on. And they only realize when it's way too late that weren't it. And men that have always been around them all these years that seem basic, unattractive, don't make them tingle, have been skipped past. And they ain't the baby fathers. They're actually responsible men that ain't even having children. But, you know, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it there now. But my point is, it's the government. It is. Down to there being no shame. No shame in single parents, no shame in a man walking away from his household or not looking after it, no shame in the church like you hear they can sit in front of the pulpit, a single mother with 4 different baby fathers. All of that has contributed. And believe it or not, that is still a government agenda. Removing morals, removing anything biblical, removing all of these stuff from schools and so on, and everybody's equal and blah, blah, and naming all of this. it's the government. I guarantee you, in a written document, everything we're seeing is just a ticked box. Yep, done it. Yep, done it. Yep. How many single parent household? Oh, over 80%. Brilliant. Okay, consumer spending will go up. Like, listen, it's very literal for them. So I don't think we should be arguing with each other. We can do up accountability, but let's get back to the root of the problem and work out how we're going to be flexible around it. We have to be smart, and being smart would just be about focusing on the family, communities, and bringing it back together, and people staying together out of duty and not out of these fantasies of love and Disney nonsense.